All right. So number 1 says the graph below shows the function f of x. Select all the points that are on the inverse function. Explain your reasoning. All right. So first step, before even going into detail about this, I want to make sure you know what an inverse function is. So if we think about a function as a machine, sorry, I'm going to try to draw this in. Hold this camera. This is our function. I'm going to label it f of x. We always think about there's something being put into our machine, that's our input, and that's our x values, and then there's something that comes out of our machine, and the function is a calculation that we do to the input, and this is the output, and this is our y value. So what an inverse function does is it simply switches the input and output. So for the inverse function, I'm going to draw this one in green. So for an inverse function, and I'm going to denote it as f of -1 x. What happens for this machine is it simply, you're using the exact same numbers, except for now, it's kind of reversed. So the numbers that were your output are now your input, and we label them as x. And the numbers that were typically your input are now your output, and we label them as y. So essentially, that's what an inverse function does. It kind of goes in reverse order. Your output becomes your input, and your input becomes your output. So let's go ahead and see what's happening here in this problem, okay? So if I look over at this graph, I'm just going to label the points that are really easy to identify. So this is really easy to see. That one's easy to see. And it's just because they're both whole numbers. So I have some points here. So next what I'm going to do, and this is for f of x, I'm going to go ahead and make a t-chart for f of x. And I'm just going to label the coordinates here, like so. So the first point, x is -8, and its y is -8. For this second point, x is -4, and its y is -6. This point, x is 0, the y is -4. And then for this point, x is 2, the y is 0. For this point, x is 4, the y is 4. For this point, x is 6, and the y is 8, okay? So if we're going to go ahead and then find the points on the inverse function, simply all we're doing is we're switching the x and y coordinates. What I mean by that, it looks like this. So my output is now my input. So all the y values become x values. And all my input becomes my output. So all my x's now are y values. And I'm just checking my work to make sure I did it accurately. So now, going back to the question, select all the points that are on the inverse function, explain your reasoning. So if I look over here, all of these points are on the inverse function, so I'm going to look over here and see if any of these match. So -8, -8, that matches, so I'm going to check it. -6, -4, that matches, so I'm going to check it. 0, -4. So you see how that is a coordinate on this chart, but not this chart? This one is -4, 0, so this is not one. Okay, 2, 0. So again, that is one on this chart, but not on this chart. It's inverse, so I know that's not one. 8, 6, which is right here. So that's one. Key thing is you do need to explain your reasoning. I already explained it, so you can describe what I described to you right here, how the input becomes the output, and the Y and X value switch. You can use your chart, but that is how you complete this first problem.